Welcome to the Build Right podcast. We build knowledge, insight, and connections into the world of construction. Whether you're a seasoned contractor, builder, or just curious about the industry, we break down the latest trends, tips, and technologies shaping the future. Join us each week as we chat with experts, share stories from the field, and explore the challenges and triumphs that come with bringing our visions to life. Welcome back, everybody. Today with me is Fred Palma. Say hi, Fred.
Good morning. Or good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Fred, Frank, what do I call you, Fred?
Frankly, Fred.
So what's up? Tell everybody what you do. Give us a little history of your life, your little background.
Construction, chameleon. I started out as a trim carpenter 1980, I believe, locally here in Burnt Hills for a builder, TJ Best. And we started primarily as trim carpenters, but the one thing that I had admired about Tom, and I've carried that the rest of my life, and as a lot of things in life that you carry with you, some you try to forget, but you carry the things that seem to be important and have worked for you. And believe it or not, one of the things that we did was we always did the footings for the buildings. And it sounds odd for trim carpenters to be down in a basement hole, and doing concrete and form boards. But the one thing then I learned in life, and it applies to life, and a lot of times construction can apply to life, is that a building or anything that you're trying to build is only as good as its foundation. Mm-hmm. And it starts with a foundation. And that's one of the biggest things that I carried. Of course, they taught me to be a good trim carpenter, and it was a different era back then. But the most important thing that it's carried me is the foundation is the most important thing. Without a good foundation, nothing's going to have longevity. Mm-hmm.
Now, you started in this area. Did you go right into construction, or did you have any other careers beforehand?
A little bit. When I got out of the military in 78, I went to work for Gold Sox Sporting Goods, and I've always worked with my hands. So I did that for a while, and then just an opportunity, a friend that knew me, we rode motorcycles together, said, hey, why don't you come work with us, and this is what we do. And I said, yeah, I'll do that till I figure out what I want to do the rest of my life.
What branch of the military?
Air Force.
Air Force? Can you elaborate a little bit on that? What'd you do?
Oh, I'm sworn to secrecy.
What'd you do in the Air Force?
Sworn to secrecy.
No.
Yes.
Really? Okay. Did you serve any time? Did you go overseas at all?
I thought I told you I was sworn to secrecy.
Well, I think it's important to elaborate a little bit on it, because a lot of those aspects are probably what have made you successful today as far as the structure goes.
Well, as far as structure, you're right. And I'm a firm believer that just like in Israel, every young man and woman have to go to the military for 2 years. And even as long as I've been out, I can recognize somebody on the job site, whether it be my job site or I run into somebody that they've been in the military, because they have this differentness, may be respect or the way they carry themselves. But 9 times out of 10, I can tell. You know, when I ask, I usually nail it 9 times out of 10. And so, yeah, it is important part, discipline and held accountable. And I've even said to my guys that in a foxhole, you're only as strong as your weakest link, meaning it's very easy for one guy to make a mistake and kill the rest of the platoon. And you're in the construction business, and you understand that everybody that comes to work for you, once they learn the craft, they always think they want to do it their way. But sometimes it can be a fatal mistake, because you'll tell them how to do it a certain way, or you're paying them to do a certain way. They break rank. And just like in the military, when you break rank and you're all using your own mind instead of direction or what you've been told to do, that's when things go bad. And it's the same thing in the construction business.
Yeah, working together as a team.
One guy needs to be the leader.
Yeah. I found a big benefit from my sports background going into business and the team aspect of it. I imagine it's a whole nother level with the military and the structure.
No, I agree with that because my son played football for 4 years and he became a good team player and it carried into my business and working for me because he is part of a team and he's an important piece, but he doesn't try to override or, overstep his boundaries when it even comes to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how long have you been working with your son?
Well, on and off since he's been 13, but there's been a couple stints that he's gone to work for other people, and he was in the union for a while. And it was important that he sees the way other people do it, and because my way might not be the best way or the way, and he can always he has brought in some ideas to the table, which is important.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you tell me the military thing. I'm just learning this about you because I remember when we first met, you were a project manager, correct?
Yes.
For BB Construction. We were building the parking garage over in Menands.
Yes.
And you had an uncanny ability of handling all the guys. Everybody on that site had respect for you. And that was a big company, right? I mean, there was dozens of employees there every day.
There was over 100 at the biggest period of time. And
on that project?
On that project, sometimes 125, 130, it varies. But when you were there, I would say at least 100. Mm-hmm. It really stems back to, in the beginning, I was picked by my peers when I was working for Tommy Best, mm-hmm. that they kind of picked me as a foreman when the foreman quit. And they wanted me to be the foreman. And it was hard to say no in the very beginning because I learned that if I lead by example, they're going to follow me. And some of them were older than me, but they certainly, because I was, I guess, nice and explained, but most importantly, even with the crappy jobs that nobody wants to do, that I would jump in the hole and do it. And it's a lot easier to get other people to do it when they see that you're just not telling them to do it and it's easy. Kind of like the father story when I walked to school in a snowstorm uphill both times.
Both ways, yeah.
Yeah, both ways.
Yeah. So was that difficult taking that position on? You said obviously you weren't the most experienced.
No, I wasn't the most experienced, but they made it easy. That of course, it's easy when people listen to you. And I learned in a hurry that because I led by example and they seemed to like me, it just became easier and easier.
I feel like today a lot of guys feel animosity if they want to move up in the rankings, if you will, of a construction site or team when there's older players in the game. Do you think that mentality has changed? Was it easier back when you started, or is it the same now?
That's a really good question because I've had young men come to me in their early 20s when they introduce themselves as the foreman and they have older people. Of course, it's human nature to go, is this kid able to do the job? I mean, I'd be lying to you if I didn't think that right off the bat, but in the same token, it's pretty easy, and I think you can answer that too, that you can tell in a hurry if somebody knows what they're talking about in our business. And he can win me over pretty quick too if he truly is educated and has learned his craft or is a good manager of people. I think that's more important too, is being a good manager of people. Because if you have a more experienced carpenter or plumber or HVAC guy that's working for you, it's the way as a young man, and I would tell that to any young man, how you present yourself. If you are respectful to that older person and tell them what you're trying to accomplish and include them on the goals, they're going to be more apt to give you 100%. And respect, anything in life is probably the most important thing.
I think I started learning the most when I started admitting things I didn't know, and was open about it. I don't understand this, or I haven't done this. And then you meet people like you along the way that say, all right, this guy, he's being honest, he's being transparent. I'm going to help him through this. So that for me was a big point of growth in my career was it being able to, I guess it's humble in a way, but just saying, I don't know the answer to this.
100%. And you're right. When I first met you, you were struggling a little bit with some things. And with your honesty came the want in me to be able to help you and to describe why and where and what, as far as when it happens or what you should look out for. And I wanted to help you because of your honesty. And, obviously it's created a bond between us. So actually we both made out.
Yeah. And that was, so I'll share that story. That was a huge risk. And I don't know if you remember, but
I remember.
Oh man, I think I was 25, 26 years old. And we had won a bid to that project, which was, how many units was that apartment complex going in? Ooh. It was an old paper mill that they were remodeling. You guys were remodeling.
Yes.
And then there was a main parking garage. It was like 46,000 square feet. And I was framing at the time, and I had a couple guys working for me. And I had heard word of the bid through one of the suppliers and said, screw it, I'm going to take a chance on this. And then we won it. And I was like, oh shit, now what? I have two guys and a lull. Like, how are we going to make this work? And through relationships and going in and sitting down and talking with you guys and really establishing a plan and a schedule and timeline, and then hiring guys. We were up to like 12 guys by the end of the project. We were able to make it work, and we finished, before the deadline and on budget. It was awesome. That was actually probably one of the highlights of my career up until this point. Do you remember how that project finished out? Did you stay there till the end as a PM?
I did stay to the end.
You did?
Yeah. And
not the parking garage, the whole reno.
Yes. Yeah, I remember well that looking at your numbers, and obviously any of those commercial projects, low bid gets the job. Sad but true. And a lot of times project managers don't care. All they care is about the number. And when you did come to me, and I looked at your numbers and thought they were a little low, so okay, let's be creative and help this kid out and get it to work. And that was my mission, was to help you, not to hurt you. And, which is important because, again, obviously it created a relationship. You made out okay. You didn't lose your shirt. You very well could have lost your shirt.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
And that's how I pretty much tried to run my career. I get more satisfaction out of that, helping people along the way, than anything else, than money or anything. Is, just being able to help somebody. And it was a perfect situation for you and I. And it was a really big project. I could have very easily said, kid, I got 120 people to manage. I don't got time for you. You need to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a lot of guys might have said that.
Yeah. And another guy working on the project, we were talking about him before the show, John Allen.
Yes.
Who a lot of people really, he was like sandpaper to them.
Yes.
And he might have been to you, I don't know.
Of course.
But he was also right there he was very hard, kind of military-esque, but he helped us through that whole process as well. And looking back, what's kind of crazy is we're all in business to make money, right?
Sure.
We don't do this for solely fun, and we don't need the practice, but I couldn't tell you down to the penny what I made on that job. Yeah. But I do remember the time and the experience, and that was a lot of fun.
But you very easily could remember if you lost your tail on it.
That's true. I could have not been here today.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, it doesn't really matter how much you made, as long as you got through it and you didn't lose your tail, which to me is the most important thing. Obviously, we're all in it to make money, and the more you make, the better off you're going to be, and you keep moving forward. But more importantly, dodging a bullet in that case, because certainly you were on a slippery slope that, because of your lack of experience in that world,
it could have gone bad. Yeah.
It could have gone really bad.
Yeah, and then to that point, all the framing experience we had was houses or duplexes. We'd done like a couple small apartment buildings that were panelized, but I mean, to take on a project like that, I still remember the the site guys were pushing the surveyors out, then the masons were pushing the site guys out, and then we were pushing the masons out. The framers were pushing the masons out. I mean, it was insane. That was a good lesson in project management for sure.
Yeah, it was tough scheduling wise because by memory, I think whether it be the weather or something, we kind of fell behind and before you got there with the time frame. And it happens a lot. Maybe it was the lay down area, because I don't know if you remember, but we had to take the center part of the roof out and turn it into a courtyard. And we had to fly things in. So it was a tricky project to cut a hole through that big building, make it an outdoor courtyard with grass on the inside. And so there was a lot going on. It could have been very easy for me to push you off. But then again, I think that's what happened because of the parking lot, the laydown area, that time frame got pushed a little bit, and it was a time crunch for everybody involved. Not that you knew that, but you just happened to win the backwards lottery, and congratulations, kid. You got an impossible schedule. You're really low on the number, and good luck.
Yeah, yeah. Have at it.
Have at it.
Oh, the commercial industry is so cutthroat. Like, they don't care.
No.
They just, you're the low number. We don't care. Get it done.
Yeah, let's face it. We're in a world that, hooray for me, to hell with you, period. And as long as their wallet's fat, they don't care if you have anything in your wallet.
Yeah, exactly. So how long after that did you end your career with BB? Where'd you go from there? I
bounced, shit. Oops.
What? You can swear.
I can swear?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Just don't have bombs.
So, boy, you're really going to test my memory. I believe I did I don't know when I went to La Chase. I think La Chase was before that. How many years ago was that project?
Gosh, had to be
8, 9, 10?
Yeah, 10 years ago.
Yeah, so right after that, I got a call from an architect, and I believe I went on my own for a year, which later in my career, I kind of did that a few times because obviously I'm a working boss. So I just expanded my side work and went full time, thought I was going to stay full time. And then I got a call from an architect, Owen Neitzel from Sanders, worked for Danny Sanders. And he said, "Hey, are you adverse to going back to doing what you do best?" Like, I knew that. I knew when he said that.
Putting footings in?
Yeah, putting footings in. Okay.
Yeah.
So the first question I always ask is, what's the project? Who is it? And it was Mercer Construction, Dave Crandall, great guy. I found this out after the fact, and it was 2 big projects, and he made me a deal, project manager and run the jobs, but it ended up being 2 at the same time. At first, it was bid the one, so I bid the one. The intriguing part for this was it was a mile from my house. It was a 18-building apartment complex, renovate, which became a little difficult because we had to move the people, and it was low-income housing, out of buildings, transfer them, remodel the building, and then move them back in. So it had its challenges, full-on remodels of these buildings, and it was called Highland Hollins, I think. Then it got renamed to Colonial Square. It's on the corner of Clisby and 67 or Church Street in Amsterdam. I didn't know at the time. He also was talking to those people about a project in Ticonderoga, which was the old Moses Hospital, turning into senior apartments. I said yes, and so it put me on an adventure of starting in the morning, which I thought it was going to be easy peasy, a mile from my house. It was to get into the first job, but then I would drive all the way up to Ticonderoga, check on the guys, drive all the way back in the afternoon, and check on Amsterdam. And we're talking 2 major projects. I certainly don't regret doing it. It was a challenge. It was rewarding, and Dave took care of me. And the only blip in it, and we go right back to schedule and how things work. When we started doing the demo in the old hospital, my asbestos crew was in there and the building started crumbling. They called me in. I went in. I started questioning, and I really started questioning beforehand because a couple times I went in the building. Dave, are you sure the engineer signed off on this building? Just looking at it myself, being in so many buildings. Oh, yeah. And I read all the reports. I think I hired Dave Biggs. I think Dave was still in Ryan and Biggs, and they came up and they deemed the building. Or no, I used Ron Bova. Ron Bova, he's local here in Glenville. And he deemed the building unsafe because he's a structural guy of old buildings.
What was crumbling on it? What was
the bar joists were rotted? It was just the roof was caving in.
Oh man!
And it was visually, I thought so, but the report said otherwise. You just get that gut feeling, when you're around buildings so much, and you can tell when things work and don't work. And the only problem with it, and the project did go on, and we built a brand new building, and the front of it mimicked the old building with the precast, and because a lot of people in Ticonderoga and all the residents there were all tore up that were tearing the building down, and so we, in order to pass that through the board, had to look like the old hospital in the front. The rest of it was hardy board, I believe red hardy board, and like your typical buildings.
So you're stretched thin with these two projects, and now you got these issues.
And now my time went because it was a HUD project, and they couldn't because they have other ones on the board, so they can't give you more time. So now I'm stretched thin, and my time went from this to this.
And your scope went from this to this.
Well, the only good thing is it's a little easier with new construction versus a remodel, and so that became a little easier in its own set of challenges, but we had to start from brand new, and we lost 2 months on and any of these commercial projects, they don't give you more time. If anything, they give you less time that you need to build the building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They all want it yesterday. So and all contractors always say, yeah, we can do it.
Of course,
because we want the work.
Yeah. So you completed those on time, and
we did. It was close on both of them, but we did. Myself, the team, both teams. Some contractors were the same, some were not. It was a challenge, and again, it was rewarding. And even monetarily, Dave stuck true to his promise and rewarded me. I would do it again. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm a little older now. Maybe I would.
So after that project, did you continue on your own, or did you get back into project management?
So it's funny that you should say that, because right after that, then the architect called me, and I did for myself a big remodel project in Wells, New York for St. Jude. And it was a drug and alcohol rehab building, and it was the old Hunt Hotel in Wells. It was ripping out the whole third floor, and the only caveat to it was that all the woodwork and everything on the third floor had to kind of match everything on the second floor. So once again, your time shrinks because now you're getting knives made in Chicago to mimic the moldings, and the knives that they make for this molding are one of the more expensive parts, and there's a lead time to it. So a lot of it had to fall into place. And again, once again, we did do it on time, and this was me and my neck, and my insurance is on the line, but it also equated to getting a second building right in my hometown, a mile from my house. Once again, in Hageman, they had a second drug and alcohol rehab building, an old Victorian building. So I guess my prize was more work and that type of work. And it is pretty challenging. It's difficult, but when you're trying to mimic 150-year-old moldings to the T, there's a lot of chance you take, and you're very dependent on this man that makes these moldings, because you wait 3-4 weeks for it, and they need to match.
You hope it's right. Yeah.
Right. And, God forbid, you get 5,000 feet of this molding and it's wrong.
Oh, man.
So, but again, it went well. You just need to learn, and from being in the business is be careful with who you pick to do business with, and you get what you pay for, and something like that. I didn't go with the cheapest guy. The guy I went with said all the right things. He had a history of getting these moldings done, which was important to me. I'd rather spend $5,000 extra and, be able to sleep at night while I'm waiting for this molding.
Mm-hmm. So how are you staffed at this time? Because you and I both know how extensive the back end can go for some of these projects, and the paperwork and doing all the due diligence, finding those companies. Like, how did you find a company in Chicago to make the molding?
You'd be surprised of just the relationships that you make. And I had the honor to work for a man, David Christopher. He owned a big construction company out of Dallas. They reached out to me. I forget how they found me, but they were building price choppers up here. They were doing Kroger's straight up through, and from Texas up to the Midwest. And I believe there was a man that switched over to Price Chopper as a project manager of their construction department. They have a construction department at Golub, and he brought in David Christopher. Now, he didn't really know anybody in New York. He did a couple stabs, and the moon and stars aligned. He reached out to me, and I ended up working for him for 8 years. He maybe 4 years into it, 3 years into it, he came over to my house out of the blue and said, "Congratulations, you're the new vice president of my company." Okay. Yeah. I argued that I'm not, but I ended up being. So with that, I've learned to really survive and swim amongst the sharks, because there's a lot of cold calling. You're dealing with Walmart people out of Arkansas, and trying to sell yourself in the company and keep it going. We did a lot of universities. I would have to go and meet all these people, and I got put out of my element. But I also learned a lot. And along with that, you meet a lot of people, and you try to keep the Rolodex or something that you're like, hey, maybe I might need this guy someday.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, like the guy in Chicago, and you'd be surprised how people remember you, or you just give them a little tidbit of, how we met or whatever, and sparks their memory. And, you get that trust factor, and you say, "Congratulations, you're making my knives."
Yeah. You don't have a Rolodex still, do you? Just a phone?
Scott, I'm going to be totally honest with you right now. I still have 2 Rolodexes. I just can't get myself to throw them away. I obviously have a lot in my phone, but to put 3,000 business cards into a phone would take you a lifetime. So I may never flip it. I did flip it the other day and see some names, and I guess it's kind of fun once in a while to maybe go back in memory lane.
Some people go through their old family pictures. You like to go through your you flip
it. Isn't that nice? I remember him.
Yeah. Oh, so you finished these big projects now, the ball's rolling, and you stayed on your own, or
no? And then the phone rang, and I forget. Oh boy, you're really making me think about things. Where did I go next?
Didn't you jump with Trinity for a little while?
I remember did. That. Betty and Kring and Trinity, and Betty Kring, Trinity, I think. Oh, and then Plank. And after Plank, so the last gig for me was Benjamin Moore Paint Factory. And again, I was bound and determined not to go back to that world. And John Roth reached out to me, called me a couple times, and it was I'm more drawn to projects than money. It sounds weird to say that, but
No, that makes sense. I get it.
it was a paint factory, and I can't remember exactly. I want to say the main building was 180,000 square feet by memory. There was a couple, 400 thousand. No, I'm sorry. 50, 60,000 square feet buildings. There was where they store cans, and I'm going back to my memory. There was big crash walls. It was a big site project too. I mean, because it was built into the side of a hill. So we had to take all that dirt, and they had property on the other side of the bike path, and we made what could be a ski mountain out of this dirt, and then we transferred it over. So when we first started the project, that itself was a huge project with the retaining walls, because it literally, where the factory went was, if you put the footings where they are right now and you left the dirt, the building, even though it's 50 feet tall, it might have been 10 feet sticking out. You know, I want to say, I take that back. There was 2 or 3 feet sticking out. The foundation. So the amount of dirt and the shoring and what we had to do was astronomical as far as the site work. And that was Keller. So
Where was that project?
In Johnstown.
Johnstown.
So that was quite a feat in itself. So that's, I guess, my first winter we spent doing that. Digging a hole to build a building.
Yeah. Now you do a lot of residential too, correct?
Yes. And so after Plank, I had an opportunity with Zach Duro he called me. I was in Florida. And once again, I'm thinking, I'm going to take it easy. I'm going to slow down, start retiring. And the phone rang. I agreed to trim out a couple buildings of kitchens until he got somebody else. And meanwhile, two years later, I finished up that project and got another project. And so we went from me, and it really started as myself and one other guy, because I thought I was going to trim out a couple buildings. And I think there was 10. Yeah, the first 2 buildings had 10 in them. The rest of the 24 to 20, I don't even remember how many buildings, a lot. Had 12 in, but those 2 were 20 apartments. I thought, well, how long is 20 apartments, little apartments, going to take me to trim? I don't need to get a lot of people. So we did them, but unfortunately, or however you want to look at it, it just rolled into 2 years worth of work, kitchens, decks. We even
Like how you said, unfortunately.
No, unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to look at it. But countertops, we were just ended up being the go-to guys. And so we went from 2 to 8.
Mm-hmm. Now you're a working owner.
Yes.
Right. You're obviously with some of these bigger projects. I'm assuming you got to kind of step out.
I do and I don't. With the Zach's project, I was pretty much the kitchen guy for 80% until they were starting to tear me up physically, because they were more of the Scholastic cabinets, very heavy, not your typical residential kitchens. Mm-hmm. And Lance from Executive Group were making those in Amsterdam. And he really started with, I believe, with the Scholastic and a lot of schools and down in New York City. And now you're starting to see a lot of those type of cabinets in these apartment buildings. The only problem I guess I have is they're so heavy. They're very heavy.
Mm-hmm. You're working with your son doing trim?
Yes, he primarily stays on the trim with his guys, and I was doing the kitchens.
Okay.
And then I had a couple guys doing the decks, because we ended up getting all the decks, the railings, putting the AZAC down, the railing systems. Mm-hmm. And we did the clubhouse, would had the cable rails. I mean, we're kind of like the go-to guys. We did all the kitchen and cabinetry in the clubhouse. We're just
finishes.
I mean, it started inside, but outside has finishes too.
Yeah. Was your son doing sheetrock for a while on his own?
No, he was a union painter for
painting.
Yes.
Okay. So he's gotten into the trim now with you. How do you manage that relationship to father-son? Is that difficult to?
No, I don't think so because, I tell a story and everybody thinks it's funny. And this is a true story. I don't know why I woke him up on it. It was his birthday by chance and he was 13. I found out like maybe a week or two earlier that a family member, a son, primarily a son, can run a circular saw for his father's company at 13. If I hire you off the street, you have to be 18. Weird as it is, I took advantage of that law. And I woke him up on his 13th birthday, mainly because I needed help, or I think somebody bailed on me. And I said, hey, wake up, I got you a birthday present. He said, no, Dad, I'm tired. I want to sleep. And I go, no, I got to give you a birthday present now. He goes, just tell me what it is. It's a job. No. So, make a long story short, grudgingly, I got him out of the house and we went to work. He didn't talk to me all day. However, he cleaned up all the shingles. It was a rip off and reapply. He carried up all the shingles on the roof. He cleaned up the whole yard. Perfect job. Put it in the dumpster. And we're riding home in my truck. And he still wasn't talking to me. Looking straight ahead. Reach in my pocket. Now, this was... He was born in 86, so 1999, riding home. And I reached in my pocket while I'm driving. I think I'm at a red light, pull out a $100 bill. I go, here's for today. He looks at the $100 bill, folds it in half, puts it in his pocket, and says, hey, Dad, do you have more work next weekend?
No kidding.
True story.
So he was with you ever since?
He's been with me ever since, on and off. He's done his own thing when I kind of thought a couple times that I've had too much or I can't keep going 7 days a week. Or he certainly has gotten his own work, and which is important too, because it gave him an opportunity, and to bid it. And there's no better way to learn if you lose a little bit of money on a job, because nothing teaches you a lesson better than your wallet. Mm-hmm. If you can't even tell me what you made on that job, but I tell you what, if you lost $10,000, you'd remember.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
So there's no better lesson than to learn by your wallet.
Mm-hmm. Do you see you passing the business on to him at some point?
Yes. And so we're trying to establish, and right now we're doing work for Bruce Tansky and establish relationships with contractors. So eventually I can kind of feed into the shadows. The one thing and he's a phenomenal carpenter and a great leader too. I have one of my carpenters is older than me. I know it's hard to believe that somebody's older than me, but I have a carpenter that's older than me. And he asked Josh, and once again, we go back to that respect thing and how you talk to people. And he's been brought up that way. And he actually loves working with Josh. He kind of like, I will go work with Josh. Mm-hmm. And he always asks, Josh, what do you want me to do next? But Josh has an answer for him too, and what to do, when to do next, because he knows the business. He's been in it since he's been 13. He's 39 now. If he hasn't learned it yet, he's never gonna.
Yeah. Did he ever do anything else?
He went to he when he dropped out of he came to me. I forget what year, 05, I believe, the fall of 2005. And he was in Hudson Valley. Mm-hmm. And at the time, he thought he was going to be a gym teacher, which I always said, hey, that's a great job. You get paid to play all day. So I didn't argue that. And he was athletic. I thought he was good with kids. He lasted a semester. He came into my office and said, hey, Dad, would you be mad at me if I dropped out of school? Because I don't want to waste your money. And I looked at him and said, Josh, the only thing I care about is you're happy in life, period. You don't have to be a gym teacher, a garbage man, a police officer. I just want you to be happy. Mm-hmm. So he said he wanted to be in construction, and he had been. And, of course, I got him a job. I got him a job with WeatherGuard doing commercial roofing. And he learned in a hurry up there in 90-degree heat, or of course, when you're up on any of those roofs, whether it be rubber or, any type of the flat commercial roofs, it might be 90 out, but it's probably about 140 up on that roof. Mm-hmm. And he struggled with heat exhaustion, I think, the first week, and he had to learn. But by memory, he did it for a couple of years, and again, it was part of the learning process. And then I think, and I could be wrong, he could probably sit here and correct me, but I know he did a stint at Solid Surface Craftsman. But that talk about, in return, because of his countertop knowledge, because he was making countertops when we were asked to help out. They were in trouble at the Elements a couple of years ago. He had countertop experience, and he knew one of the fabricators, and that parlayed into me being able to say yes a little easier. Of course, I don't like lifting granite, but we learned that in a hurry. But it did help, and it came back around. So I don't think there's anything in construction that you learn that wouldn't be useful.
Yeah, no one can ever take it away from you, even if you don't want to do it.
Right.
5 years from now, 10 years from now, it's still up here.
Yeah, and I made him paint because I hated painting. And, I thought, I'm going to punish him. I'm going to make him paint. It turns out he liked it.
So how important is it, do you think, for kids coming into the industry, if someone's listening to this that wants to get into construction, to learn different trades?
Well, as you know, first of all, it seems like it's hard to get the kids interested in the trade right now. I think it's more important to put out there that certainly, and with Josh and I, if you've seen him on the job site, we probably have more fun than it's legally allowed. Yeah. But just saying that.
No, literally though.
Yeah. But the point being is maybe society has deemed it a certain way, but we do have a lot of fun. It's very rewarding. You can look back at the end of the day, and I still drive by buildings that I built 40 years ago. I'm showing my age. That I go, wow, that building still looks great. There's satisfaction in that. Working on an assembly line and just stamping things as they go through. It's a job. Yeah. And in this, you build somebody's house, they're going to have memories in it at Thanksgiving, at Christmas time. What's the replacement of that, or what's the value of that? Mm-hmm. For me anyways, when I build somebody a beautiful sunroom or a beautiful deck and they have their parties on it and brag about their neighbors, that's really the biggest get back that I get. Yes, I do it to make money. We have to have money to feed ourselves. But that get back to me means a lot to me.
Yeah, it's service.
Yeah, it's a service, and you get to see happy people. Working on a car, that the car broke down, people are disgruntled. They're mad at the person that sold them the car. They're mad at the mechanics for charging too much, on and on and on. So, I'm not saying that in a bad way, but in our industry, done right, that there's a lot of satisfaction in it.
Yeah, and we kind of poke fun at the construction industry a little bit as far as how old school and archaic it can be with not moving on and following technologies. But there's an aspect of it that is incredibly appealing to young men and women, where there's like a camaraderie when you're in the field and it's shitty conditions, it's raining, you're muddy, especially up here in upstate New York, the clay, everything, and you're trying to get projects done and you're under a timeline, and then you finish it. It's Friday, you crack a beer or whatever you do, and you're laughing. There's nothing like that. You don't get that in an office setting. And I would say personally, some of my best days or best memories from construction were framing. Now that I've kind of stepped away from that, I'm more in the office side of things. I do miss that. And I think guys like you or me, we're always drawn to that,
100%. That was basically my problem. While I didn't keep chasing after I left David Christopher, and then I went to Bovis right after that, which was 5 or 6 years, I believe. the office setting and the longing to be back out in the field, because once it's inbred in you and what you do for a living, it's very difficult. And I think that's also part of the reason why I did it on the weekends and a lot of nights, because I didn't want to lose touch of, and you touch on the technology part of things, I didn't want to lose touch of that either, because if you blink your eyes, and a lot of guys make the mistake of doing, I always do it that way. Well, technology has moved, and even something as simple as Tyvek building paper. When it first came out, there wasn't a lot of instructions to it. It was air infiltration paper. You staple it on, you cut the corners. Now it's so much more involved with all the taping and what you have to do. And same company, but they're always pushing the envelope what we can do better. So you really need to stay on board with the technology. Of course, when I started, we had to get to work with a horse and buggy, but.
That's because you're from Johnstown.
No, Amsterdam.
There's a lot of Amish out there.
No, they're in trucks now too.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. What is it that draws us back to the field, though? I mean, on the flip side, it's a good thing because you can start in the field when you're young. And then as your body starts to break down, there is opportunities in this industry to move into a cleaner position, if you will, less takes less of a toll on your body.
But the flip side of it is certainly, and this, not everybody can make that transition from the field into to the office, to be a project manager, to be an owner. I mean, it's not as easy, because if it was easy, everybody would be rich and everybody would own their own company. I mean, everybody. And so there's a lot of risk involved, and there's a lot of adjusting to, especially if you're so used to working and having that freedom outside that you're sitting at a desk staring at a computer. It's definitely something to get used to, and I struggled with it. I would get yelled at by some of my staff because I would sneak out and go work in the field, and I'm supposed to be vice president running the job.
You were sneaking out for a cigarette or something?
No, I never smoked. But yeah. and the worst part was them damn Nextels that they had back then. You beep beep beep. Where are you?
Yeah. Do they still use walkie-talkies in the commercial industry? Or is it
I don't really see it anymore. Our biggest fight in the business right now is keeping everybody off of their phone. I mean, so yeah, there's no walkie-talkies because everybody's got a phone and earpieces. I mean, they can be useful. The electricians are running a wire and trying to figure things out when you're 300 feet away. I mean, obviously the earpiece becomes very important, but most of these guys are on their phone, looking at stuff they should be looking at nighttime, and rather than during the day. And certainly runs a risk at it. At that job, I had to fire a kid that I knew for 5 or 6 years. I brought with me to in Manans, and it came to my attention a couple times. He was the certified lull driver. I got him his license. Gave him an opportunity. He was making good money, and he would be driving on the low looking at his phone. And I gave him a couple warnings, and now this is a kid that I brought into the business and had known him for 5 or 6 years. I had no choice but to fire him. Mm-hmm. I had to use him as an example. I mean, it wasn't, but I gave him warnings. I mean, and obviously other people, I mean, they'll rat him out. I mean, we a lot of times we're like school kids on the construction site too. We love the tattletale on the other guys.
That is especially commercial sites.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Do you see kids coming in? Have you hired any young kids lately or no?
Yes.
Do you see them having those same tendencies with their phones, or is it getting better?
No, and to be honest with you, I met a young man, and he's worked for me for a couple of years now, and as soon as I met him, he was actually working for somebody else, and within 15 minutes, I said to his then boss, I'll be stealing him. Mm-hmm. I knew right away that he was somebody worth hiring, because it's hard to meet a 20-year-old that wants to learn, that wants to give 100%. And right away, I could just tell by talking to him, and he was asking me all the right questions, and he's still that way. He's learning. He pays attention. He does what he's supposed to do. He wants to make sure I'm happy. And if there was 100 of them out there, hire 100 and have a way bigger company, but they're hard to find. And, when you find one, you got to treat them right and latch right onto them right away. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't have a position for them, make a position.
Yeah, I've got a young kid that works for me, and he's under 18, and now with all the rules, they can't use power tools. I don't even think they're supposed to push a lawnmower anymore, but he is a super hard worker, and I've kept him because you can't find him.
No.
And I'm hoping that he'll grow into something more, which he will, because he's got a lot of motivation and he's a hard worker. Interesting thing, because construction is so taboo now amongst these young kids with technology, he's involved in sports. I'm not going to say his name. I'll get him all embarrassed on here. But he's involved with sports, and they do a lot of lifting. And he lifted every day. And then when he first came to work with me, we worked a couple days, and he'd come in the morning. I said, "How was your lift last night?" He says, "Scott, are you kidding me? I'm not going lifting after this anymore," because it's hard work. But he found enjoyment in that. He's working, getting paid, and getting to work out at the same time. He's just basically humping floor joists or decking boards or whatever we need him to do, bringing tools back and forth and setting up. But it's starting that foundation for him of knowledge of the industry, and just watching some of our older carpenters work, or watching the rockers or anybody, So that's fun to me too, is watching the young generation come in and seeing them learn. I love helping kids out and teaching, hopefully the right way. but you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. When my son wanted to build his house, and I'm saying at least 10 years ago, I maybe it's been 14 years. I think so. Yeah, probably 14 years ago. I would go there and give direction in the morning, and then he would follow suit, because I think he was not working at the time. It just worked out where he was able to work on his own house. And like I said to him, that if you build your house with your own hands, you're going to be more apt to never miss a payment and hang on to this house the rest of your life, because you built it with your sweat and your body, and you pounded every nail into this house. And how rewarding is that the house that your kids grow up, they graduate, you grow old in, because I don't think he's ever moving, that you built with your own two hands. Mm-hmm. And not a lot of people can say that. So there is that, as far as, I guess, a sales pitch to the young men, that learning the craft, that even working on your own house, there's satisfaction. Even if you don't build your own house, you put an addition on, or whatever it may be, a bathroom remodel job, there's a satisfaction that you're not going to get out of working in the factory and then being able to pay a remodeler to come in and do it versus doing it yourself. Mm-hmm. I believe.
Yeah. So throughout your career, what has been your most challenging project to date?
Ooh, that's not on the script.
Yeah. Take your time.
Yeah. Wow. Boy, most challenging. Probably that Moses job, only because, and that was there was a couple things dealt to me that I wasn't ready or prepared for, or you certainly wouldn't have scripted it as far as what's the best way to build a building, because you reluctantly agreed to a time frame, and I don't remember, it might have been 6 months of project. Don't quote me, but that's probably about what it was. And they seem to use that as a go-to. 6 months. How long to build that? 6 months.
Everything is 6 months.
6 months. And then losing 2 months, it was, and Dave, basically said, we either take it or turn it down. And I didn't want to let anybody down, especially him. And now the community was, looking forward to this project. So now I'm driving all the way to Ticonderoga every day from Amsterdam, and then I'm back and keeping this job on schedule. So the two jobs at the same time, and my job in Ticonderoga lost me 2 months.
Yeah.
Gone. And so that probably was the most challenging, I believe. I mean, I've had some structurally challenging or having to come up with some ideas, but time is, you can't get time back. I mean, coming up with a fix is totally different than coming up with time, because you can't back up with time.
Mm-hmm. So throughout your career, facing different challenges, how did you handle them in the field? And if somebody coming up, what would you suggest to them if they're approached, or if they are faced with something that is some type of adversity or an issue that they've got to deal with? What's the best way to do it? What's the Fred Palma way?
Well, number one is don't panic, obviously, because if you panic, or, you show on your face that you're nervous about it, you're not going to be able to sell any ideas to somebody, whoever it may be, if you appear that you're nervous or you're worried. So one thing is to be confident, and I've said this to young superintendents that have worked for me, is live and die by your decision. Be judge and jury, make your decision, good, bad, or indifferent, but you need to be steadfast on your decision and rely on your experience. That's basically how I've gotten through is I let my experience guide me and make the best decision. Don't be afraid to make the decision. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. I mean, everybody makes mistakes. And I think that's another downfall for a lot of guys. They're so worried about making a mistake, they won't make it. And I've had young superintendents work for me that wouldn't make a decision and lose time on making a decision because they're afraid to make the decision. And there's never been any hesitation. Let's go. Let's win it.
One of the things that I say to young guys that come out for us is, if they're faced with an issue and they're talking to me, they're looking for advice, I always say, I've never knew how to frame a house until I framed a house.
Well, it's kind of odd that you said that, because my dad, when I was very young, I want to say maybe 14. And when you start, especially my dad was a stickler on, you're 8 years old, you should be able to get a job now.
And you could drive there too.
Yes. And he instilled in me, and I believed it, that I could do anything. And he made me believe it somehow. And he said, even if you get a job, tell them that you have experience and just watch the next guy for a minute or two. And oddly enough, I believed him, and I did it. And well, the other thing is going to be aging myself, is that at 14, I did a couple neighbors' cars and bodywork, and did some painting, and rusting out on my neighbor's pickup truck, and I bought a rocker, and I did it for him. And I did it because believe it or not, and we didn't have the internet. I went to the library, and took out a book on bodywork and how to mix the Bondo and how to do it, and just read the book, brought the book back, and went for it. And I told him I know how to do it.
Yeah.
And he gave me the job.
You always push out of your comfort zone. It
Always.
Seems like.
Yeah, and 100%. And it's been that way through life. I mean, is believe in myself, push myself to the limits, as far as even on a job that I kind of know, I'll kind of learn as I go. And that's kind of like what my dad was trying to say to me, that he saw that in me, which isn't a bad thing. The heart surgery thing went bad once, but other than that, but that was off of YouTube.
At least you tried, right?
Yeah. How hard can this be?
Oh my God. Oh, it's always fresh with you, man. That's funny.
Well, you knew what you were going to get.
Yeah. So if somebody's coming up in the industry today and they're new, what advice do you have for them?
What advice? It's funny you should mention that. My dad's advice was very simple. When I first got out of high school, before I went in the military, my first job was with the highway department, and he actually got me the job there. He said, "Go see this guy." I forget who the superintendent of the highway department was at the time.
Is that why I always used to see you leaning on a shovel?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Or sleeping in the truck. I'm good at sleeping in the truck too.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
So he would say, number one, and it's funny, I said the same damn thing to my son when he went to work. Be to work early. If it starts at 7, be there at 6:45. Not 6:46, not 6:47. Be there at 6:45. Be prepared. Bring the correct clothing. Have extra clothing. Wear the proper, I've had guys, show up to work with sneakers or whatever. I mean, be prepared. Do what you're told. And when you're supposed to be working, and be working. And my dad would say, and his big go-to was, even if there's a broom in the room, grab a broom and be doing something. If you ran out of work, what they told you to do, grab a broom, do something, and be working. And that advice I gave to my son, and I would give to any young man, because sometimes the boss can't come back. He thinks that it's going to take this long. Happens. Don't be on your phone or whatever. Do something. Like my dad said, pick up a broom, sweep, do something, move the material from one side of the room to the other side, do something, but don't be caught on your phone or whatever it may be, eating your lunch early, or if you're supposed to be working, be working. If you're paid to 3:30, work till 3:30. Lunch breaks at 12, work till 12. If lunch gets over at 12:30, be back to work at 12:31. Real simple stuff. And it's paid off. And that goes a long way, because you can't teach work ethic. I don't care what you think. It's really instilled in you, and you either have a good work ethic or you don't. It's hard to teach that.
What's your day-to-day now? What time you wake up?
It varies. I've been trying to. No, I wish. I try to take advantage a little bit of Josh being on board. And I really need to, and he acknowledges that too, because of my age. Obviously, I'm not a spring chicken anymore. So, I kind of paid my dues. If they need me, but they all been good about that. But on the same token, I'm the guy at the lumber store at 5:30, 6 o'clock at night, getting stuff, for the guys in the morning, or doing the estimates or the paperwork. So they need me in the field right now too, but I do take advantage of, I would say 8 or 9 o'clock's a good show up time for me.
No. Well, you're handling more of the back end now.
Yeah, and I need to, but that's an important role too.
Very, yeah, because that keeps the ball rolling. That keeps
100%.
You steering the ship. Yeah,
and there's no glamour to it.
Mm-hmm. How much longer you got? How many more years?
Being alive? I'm hoping for at least 15 more, but
not working. What's your plan? What's your end goal?
I would say 5 more years. I probably 5 years ago, I would be mad at myself right now for saying that, but I feel good, and a body motion stays in motion. And what else am I going to do?
Mm-hmm. Do you see your son ever taking over more of the administrative stuff and you getting back into the field with a tool belt, or no?
Geez, that's a good question. I think that, and I would probably direct them to have somebody else come in and help with the administration. Mm-hmm. Because once again,
like a partner, you're saying?
Yeah, or just hiring somebody to do it, because in his case, he's one of our best carpenters, so you lose the best carpenter along with it. And the double-edged sword of that is, when we've already talked about it, it's hard to find somebody. Mm-hmm. So now you're going to give up one of your best carpenters, and with the roll of the dice as far as finding somebody to replace them
for production.
Right. Yeah. And, I think it may be easier, and I could be wrong, to get some office help versus, because nobody wants to do physical labor anymore.
Well, Fred, believe it or not, it's time, my man. Already. Told you it'd be easy.
Time for what?
Thanks for coming on, dude. I appreciate it. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. I'm your host, Scott Raffensperger. With me today is Fred Palma. How can they get a hold of you, Fred? How can they get you to trim out some of their houses? Do you have a website or anything, a Facebook?
Yeah, Facebook, F.E. Palma Construction.
F.E. Palma Construction.
Yeah, nothing fancy, no jazzy names.
That works for me. Maybe we can attach a link in our,
there you go.
In our bio here. But thanks for listening. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, make sure to like and subscribe, Spotify, YouTube, or any of your major providers. I'm your host, Scott Raffensperger. Have a good night.